Welcome to Reimagining Miami Gardens. In this groundbreaking podcast dissertation, we examine the profound impact of leadership on government with a specific focus on how it shapes the city of Miami Gardens. Through insightful interviews, in-depth analysis, and compelling narratives, we uncover the intricate dynamics between leadership and governance, highlighting the transformative power of effective leadership in shaping the trajectory of a city. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore the role of leadership in driving positive change and development in the now vibrant community of Miami Gardens.
Welcome to Reimagining Miami Gardens podcast. I'm Oliver Gilbert, chairman of the Miami-Dade County Board of County Commissioners and the former mayor of the young and vibrant city of Miami Gardens. I'm excited to dive into the complexities of leadership in driving positive change in cities. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the challenges and opportunities faced by newly formed cities, such as the city of Miami Gardens, in their quest for transformation. In our study, we aim to address the pressing issues that hinder city progress, from bureaucratic obstacles to limited resources, and the critical role that leadership plays in overcoming those challenges. The purpose of our research and the discussions on this podcast is to uncover the strategies employed by city leaders to drive successful city transformation initiatives and provide insights into the essential elements of effective leadership in urban development. Join me as we navigate the intricacies of city management through policy and administration, examine the importance of collaboration and strategic decision-making, and uncover the valuable lessons learned from successful city transformation initiatives. Together, let's explore the transformative power of leadership in shaping the future of our cities. In this episode, we're going to talk about business development. Growing a city requires supporting local businesses and attracting new businesses to the community. When I was mayor of Miami Gardens, I made that a top priority. Joining me today as we discuss business development is Theresa, the former city manager of North Miami and the current chief operating officer for the Board of County Commissioners. Theresa.
Chairman, thank you for having me. Let's talk about business. Can you discuss some of the specific strategies or initiatives that you implemented to attract new businesses to the city during your time as mayor?
It's multi-layered, Theresa. That was an interesting question because there's just not one thing. It's a whole attitude you do and you change. One of the things I did was I adjusted the land use in Miami Gardens, the land use regulations in Miami Gardens. Another thing, and I'll talk about all of these things in detail. Another thing I did was I marketed Miami Gardens differently. And yet another thing I did was actually reduce fees. And so I'll talk about land use first. It's interesting because when I became mayor of Miami Gardens, really in my entire life, I always heard that people didn't open businesses. They didn't start businesses in Miami Gardens because they were racist and it was a black community. And so they weren't going to start businesses here. And so having practiced law for a while, one of the things I thought to myself was that's probably not true. So let's just look at it. And so when I got into it, I realized that a lot of our major commercial corridors were zoned residential. Not even and let me break that down for folks. It was zoned for you to build single family homes on major commercial corridors.
Let's back up for a second. Let's talk about land use. What is that?
So land use is the law that governs what you can put where. So a lot of times we think that you can just build anything anywhere, and that's a common mistake. Governments tell you what you can put where. So in some areas, they'll let you put businesses. In some areas, they'll let you put higher intensity businesses like industrial or warehouses. In some areas, they only let you put houses. And even if they're letting you put houses, sometimes they let you put a single family house. Sometimes they'll let you put a townhouse. Sometimes they'll let you put apartments. And so it was interesting that along the major commercial corridors, now generally among commercial corridors, you want to encourage commercial uses. But along the major commercial corridors, a lot of those corridors had been zoned for residential uses.
So when we talk about commercial corridors, you're kind of talking about the streets you pass that get you to like a highway, like the major main streets.
The 27th Avenues, the 183rd Street, those areas that are, You got 3 lanes. You should have on each side. They lead you to the turnpike. They lead you to 95. They lead you to 75. Lanes where you would expect to turn off that road and go to a major store or something. Generally, that's not what happened.
And so in Miami Gardens, you have an area where they only are zoning residential where these big roads are.
Well, the future land use and the land use for it was residential. And so one of the things that I said was, well, let's change the land use. Let's just change the land use. And so in the Miami Gardens, we went around the process of changing those land uses. I thought that was important because you ought to at least, businesses, if they want to open, they can always come in and they can request a zoning change. But that's an extra level of aggravation for them. So if they have to change your zoning, they're less likely to invest the groundwork to actually open the business. They just go someplace where the zoning is right already. Because if you have the zoning right already, you're saying that you want businesses there. When you change the zoning to allow for businesses, what you're saying to the business community is that you want business. If all of your zoning is residential for single family homes, what you're saying is you want single family homes. So for years, they had been building single family homes in Miami Gardens. But that's because that's what the zoning allowed for. I changed the zoning. And so we did things like that. We built an entertainment overlay district, which basically said that was along the 27th Avenue corridor, which basically said what we want uses that allow for entertainment. We don't care if you bring a bar and you want to stay open a little bit longer. We're kind of okay with that. We want entertainment uses along this corridor because we understand that communities are places where people actually can go and get a variety of things. So we had a lot of churches. Okay, I love our churches. We need some restaurants. We need some place for somebody to go listen to some music, to have a nice cigar if you smoke cigars. We need those things to actually happen. And so we adjusted the land use to allow for that. We adjusted our rates. I wanted to be cheaper than everybody around us. I wanted to be cheaper than Miami Lakes, Miami-Dade County, and Miramar. I wanted our rates to do things here to be cheaper.
Why?
Because businesses look at that. They look at how much your permits are. And so I wanted ours to be cheaper. We didn't have a CRA back then that could actually incentivize with money, but we could make our rates cheaper. Another thing I did was I went out and talked to business. And when they were talking, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to make sure we're faster. We're going to be faster. And so that means if I have to be your permit runner, I'll be your permit runner. We're going to be faster because we didn't have money to give them. But money time really is money when it comes to these things. And so businesses, how quickly they can get their doors open is a part of the calculation about whether they want to put a business there. Well, I will help you get your doors open quicker. If you can build it, we can inspect it. I'll help you get that done quicker. These are things that they all affect a business owner's decision on whether they're going to actually invest in your area.
When we talk about bringing in businesses, of course, there's certain type of businesses that come into different communities and there's others, right? Some at a higher scale and some at a lower scale. Let's talk about how you were able to bring Starbucks to Miami Gardens.
It's interesting because Starbucks had been in Miami Gardens early on and had failed and it closed down. It was on 441. And I remember it, and it was in a really bad corner. It was on the southeast corner of 441, which means in the morning time, you had to go down, pass it, make a U-turn, go past it again, make a right turn, and then go in through the back. And so it was a very awkwardly placed building. And I remember when it closed, I remember thinking people saying that Starbucks will never come back. And I said, well, they can come back, but they just can't come back right there. Right there is not a good spot. When Starbucks approached us, one of the things I said was, oh, yeah, I think Starbucks will do very well here. And the Starbucks here in Miami Gardens now is doing well. But I said, I want you to go, I want you to talk to me about your placement. Like, where do you want to go? And so they asked me where I thought. And I said, on 27th Avenue, right by the Walmart Plaza. I think that'd be a great place. And so, but I said, I don't really want just a regular old Starbucks. A regular old Starbucks might be fine. But if you give us a Starbucks that's a little different, I'm telling you, it won't just be It won't just be some place that people go to buy nice frappuccinos and coffees. It'll be a gathering spot. And so we talked about it, and they gave me an idea for a community Starbucks. They had maybe one other in the entire country. And so we go ahead and we create a community Starbucks, and it becomes very successful. But it's all in knowing your community. We needed someplace with a conference room that we can actually have meetings. And we needed someplace where community groups could gather. And we needed that. And so it's a much bigger Starbucks with a conference room.
When you start talking about to the business community, what are your marketing points to the business community?
All numbers and enthusiasm. You know, people would wonder about whether Miami Gardens would support the business financially. I remember that was the case with Topgolf, and I was like, no, we will. I mean, these are the numbers. This is where we're spending money at. This is how much money we're spending. This is the demographics of the city. We'll spend money. And so the numbers matter. I think for a long time, people hadn't actually focused on the actual analytics of it. The actual analytics that businesses need to look at is your income and where the people are spending money from that area. We can look at those things. We found out those things, and we start to sell Miami Gardens that way. And then also starting to cut through some of the noise. I think that a lot of times, and I'm not going to say it was intentional, but the news would always overly emphasize when something bad happened in Miami Gardens, and it would always give businesses trepidation. And even if it didn't happen in Miami Gardens, it happened in Miami Gardens. If something happened on 183rd Street and 67th Avenue, which is not Miami Gardens, not even close to Miami Gardens, they would call it Miami Gardens. Or then they say, or right outside Miami Gardens. Not right outside Miami Lakes, which is much closer to. They say right outside Miami Gardens. And so, you know, it was a lot of the things that I did for businesses and help attract businesses was to help the media understand that I was going to complain and put them on blast every time they did it. I remember having the editorial board meeting with the Miami Herald where I chronicled a list of all their mistakes. These are all your mistakes. These are all times you said Miami Gardens when it wasn't true. These are all the times. And then I did something else. I said, now I want to give you some things that weren't mistakes. And I'm not telling you that I want you, that you should have done what you did to us, to them. But all of these things that happened that were very near Miami Beach or near Aventura or near, where you didn't mention Aventura or you didn't mention Miami Beach. Or something's in the city of Miami and you'll say Northwest Miami-Dade. So I'm not saying I want you to call those other cities out. I'm saying I want the exact same treatment. That's what I want. I'm not gonna suggest why you did us this way. I'm gonna suggest that you're on notice now that continuing to do us this way, if you aren't doing it for everybody else, it's gonna be a problem for us. And so having those conversations, it changed over time the narrative. They start to change reporters, I think. And it changed the narrative of how they covered Miami Gardens. Now, you still going to get bad stories, but not the level that we were. And the danger of always emphasizing what happens badly in Miami Gardens, but never emphasizing what happens badly other places is that people begin to think that it only emphasizes badly. It only emphasizes bad things only happen in Miami Gardens. And so we couldn't have that be the narrative. Working with them, working with that marketing level. And then that gave me an easier sell to businesses.
Now, starting to put in new businesses obviously will change the way the community looks. What was some of the response for the community as different businesses were starting to develop?
Well, you know, it was interesting because some of the response was good, but some of it was bad. I remember when we brought Topgolf here and we announced we were bringing Topgolf. I remember that some people at a local community group complained about it. They complained. They wanted a truck stop to be there, which I could not understand. It seemed like really the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And so I was like, well, no, I appreciate it, but I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not doing that. I went out and recruited these folks, and that's the business that's going there. And now people love the Topgolf. Listen, when we moved the plaza where my county commission office is right now, that used to be the 183rd Street Flea Market. And people loved the flea market. And I remember when the flea market closed down and they started tearing it down. And I remember all the little hate mail I got. And I appreciate that. I used to get my hair cut in the flea market sometimes.
I love the 183rd Street Flea Market.
I love to get the mangoes there with the little salt and pepper and vinegar on there. That was great.
Because that's where my dad would let me go.
That was I loved it too. But you had, when you talk about not being a good use of property and land, you have here this thing right in your town center where you have all these businesses that you aren't really regulating. They're not drawing any revenue. They're not really creating jobs. I mean, it was, and so people complained, but when the new plaza opened up, well, people loved it. You had to get through. Look, there is an impression that sometimes we overvalue in politics, because anytime you want to do something different, it's going to be a problem, because people intrinsically don't like change. So their initial answer reflexively is going to be, no, don't do it. I don't want to do it. Don't do that. I'm not going to vote for you. That's crazy. They're going to be a no initially, reflexively. That's fine. Get past that. Pause, take a breath, review your work, and get past that. Because past it is where victory is. Now when folks actually going through the plaza, they can't imagine us leaving that as a flea market. They can't imagine it now. Now they can't imagine it. But when we proposed it, the people who were against it, they were really against it. They came out and everything. No. Okay.
You have major storefronts there now.
Yeah. And we're breaking ground. We just had the groundbreaking for a brand new city center that will have major entertainment functions, 200-room 4-star hotel, several restaurants. I mean, like the first F1 museum in the world will be there. Like, so we just broke down. That was one of the deals. One of the last things I started. I started before I left. And so I remember people criticizing, what are you all going to do with this? And that property, ironically, was zoned initially to be apartments. Initially, when the city acquires that property, we acquire it from someone who wanted to put like 600 public housing units there or something. And so I remember I was on the council and I was like, yeah, let's buy it. Then I became mayor. I was like, oh, yeah, we can do a lot of stuff with this. And we don't have to do it. We just have to be willing to. And so, but that's how you have to be able to look out over what is and imagine what can be. Like, looking at that property, while it's zoned residential, you can look out and all you can see is 600 affordable housing units. But I can look at the property and realize that the zoning can change. It ain't got to be 600 residential units. It's 40 acres. I can look there and I can see the performing arts center that we're building on the back part. I can see the major entertainment functions, the nice apartment buildings, the 3 restaurants, the 4-star hotel. I can look out and I can imagine that. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to work towards my imagination, not yours.
I'm excited about the hotel because, I mean, in reality, you have a major stadium in the city, and we haven't had a hotel that's there. Mm-hmm. Talk about how you've built the relationships with the existing businesses, some like the Hard Rock Stadium.
Oh, the Hard Rock Stadium, when I became mayor, the city had a pretty bad relationship with the Hard Rock Stadium, and it didn't get better right away because I actually sued them. So, yeah, I didn't get better right away. We have a good relationship now, but it's funny because people say, oh, he just does whatever they want. And I have to remind them, I'm the only person to actually sue them in the county and win, because when I became mayor, we didn't have code enforcement control or zoning control over the Hard Rock Stadium because of an agreement that Betty Ferguson made when she was a county commissioner. And I would have never made that agreement as a county commissioner because they didn't make the agreement anywhere else when they incorporated. But she did make the agreement. Okay, she made the agreement. It had a time clock on it, but the wording was written so ambiguously that you couldn't tell that it ever ended. And the county and the Dolphins had taken a position that it would never end, and the people of Miami Gardens would never have control over that area. And the minute I became mayor, I said, no, we're going to do it. And I talked to the city council, and we went ahead and filed the lawsuit. We had when governments sue each other, Florida law requires you to go through a dispute resolution process. And part of that is when the two governing bodies meet in a joint meeting. And so I was the mayor of Miami Gardens then, and the Dolphins and the county are on one side, I'm on the other side. Now I had told the county attorneys, all of who I like now, they all work for me. I told them, if it gets to this public meeting point, don't worry about the lawyers we hired. I'm going to destroy y'all. And yeah.
I'm laughing. I'm chuckling a bit because prior to that meeting, I was in a meeting when you were the mayor, and you were talking about the rights of the stadium. Mm-hmm. And that was, to say the least, became a heated meeting. But one of the things were very clear was you were not going to give up what the community needed just for the business. That you were willing to work with them, but it was going to have to be on fair terms.
Yeah, no, I remember that meeting too. I mean, they because I think that they had been used to people being afraid and backing down because the county was the 800-pound gorilla in the corner. And from my perspective, first of all, I had a great legal argument, and I'm a lawyer by trade, and I wasn't impressed with their argument. And I said, and I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. So I told them I didn't want to go to the public meeting. They went. I told them what we would do. By the time we got finished with the public meeting, the county commission was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. You need to get us out of this, resolve it. I remember people throwing their hands up, walking out, because I wanted to torture. I wanted to torture the county attorney's office and the administration and the Dolphins lawyers, who are all my friends now. But my goal was to publicly destroy them in that argument. Because they needed to understand that as a city and as a community, we had arrived. We would not back down. We would not back down. And they would not beat us. They could not beat us. We will not quit. You can't intimidate us. You can't threaten us. I remember the county commissioner then, it was Barbara Jordan. She was like, well, they got good lawyers. And I said, Barbara, I am good lawyer. I am good lawyers. I'm not worried about the lawyers they have. Their lawyers they have need to worry about me. And we went there, and I remember after the meeting, the law firm who we had hired, who I didn't let talk during the meeting, I did all the talking, they sent me this, a big life-size version of Superman cut out, and it's in my office right now. So they sent me this big life-size version of Superman with a note that said, thank you for allowing us to participate. Yeah. And then my interns, in my summer internship program that summer, they came in and they saw it and they painted Superman black. So now there's a big black Superman in my office.
I just remember you saying, there's two of us and a bunch of you in this room, and we're still going to win. I had the pleasure of being in the mayor's office at the time for the county when you came in, and that was one of the interesting times. And I think really it did change the administration and their approach, right? They knew that this wasn't going to be the same that they've had all the time. And so from there, you obviously had to work to repair that relationship that you had with the stadium.
Well, I did. And you know what? And we have a great relationship now. Like, we partner together for Student of the Week. They support all our initiatives. We have a great relationship now. And part of that is this. It's a relationship based on respect and strength. When they felt like they could bully us and push us, it was one thing. But now they know, if I say it, I mean it. If I say it, I mean it. Don't make me prove my point. So that relationship, we can, because ultimately, look, the relationship between the stadium and the area had been contentious because Betty Ferguson, who was the county commissioner, fought the existence of the building of the stadium. And so I've been contentious the whole time. I took a different position. The beach is a beach. Miami Beach has a beach. They can draw people to the water and they can develop around it. We have a stadium. That's what we have to develop around. So I never saw them as an adversary. I saw them as an asset in the community that I could actually use as an anchor to bring in to weigh down and hold down developments. I saw them as an asset. But what I couldn't have them going to the county for permissions and not to the people who actually live around the stadium. They have to be accountable, an accountable part of the community just like everyone else. And they didn't trust the leadership because the leadership from their perspective had been Betty Ferguson, who they thought to be irrational because she said no to everything no matter what. If it came from them, she said no. And what I said was, listen, you got to trust me. I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is if it's something that I think will be good for Miami Gardens, I'll do it. I will do it. And so you just have to make the case to me. You make the case to me and don't worry about them. I'll make the case to the people. Because ultimately, I need to be able to anchor our business development projections around the success of this stadium. And I had to remind them that, listen, stadiums are never the highest and best use for property. If you let a stadium come and only have 8 Dolphins games and 6 Hurricane games, that means you have this big piece of property in the middle of your city, useless for all of that year. That's never the highest and best use. And to boot, I had to tell the community, I was like, when you talk, they're the largest taxpayer in Miami Gardens, Hard Rock Stadium is. Our stadium pays taxes. It's the only stadium in Dade County that actually pays taxes. They pay taxes. They pay property taxes. Our largest taxpayer. But independent of that, their taxes aren't based on the size of their property, singularly. So the more things they do there, the more money they bring in there, the more their property taxes go up. It's a use-based tax. And so when they want to add the Miami Tennis Open, I'm like, hey, yeah, add the Miami Tennis Open. Because you just raise your taxes. You want to bring World Cup? That's great. I can build the hotel because you're bringing World Cup, but yeah, you're going to have to pay more taxes. You got to pay more taxes. So I understood that their success could be part of the thing that actually helped grow the city in every way. But I had to get them to understand that first I wasn't the enemy. I wasn't the old boss is the same as the new boss. No, the new boss is different this time. And they had to understand that I couldn't be pushed around. I couldn't be bullied. That I wasn't afraid of their 2,000 an hour lawyers. I wasn't afraid of them. That I would stand in the room. I would represent the residents of Miami Gardens, and I would win. And so, having established that, I think that they made the decision, first, that I was reasonable. Second, that it was easier to have me as a friend and an ally and convince. And when I say no, I mean no. But generally speaking, if it's good for the city, I wouldn't say no.
How did you help develop businesses who were already there or small businesses in Miami Gardens? Talking to them, outreach to them, asking them what we could do better. When we changed fees and our BTRs and all that stuff, that actually affected them too. What's your BTR? Business tax receipts, our occupational licenses. We changing those things made it easier for them also, making the processes easier. The government doesn't have to be hard. Bureaucracies don't have to exist. You need processes. You don't need bureaucracies, though. And so that type of insistence actually helped them also. Did you create any initiatives for business owners? We did a lot of grants programs that reached out. We used some of our community development block grant dollars to actually reach out and help businesses. But a lot of it was education. A lot of it was changing how we did business as a city. I remember that there was a rule in city government that when you were bidding for something, and I think it was landscaping. This was the particular one. But when you were bidding for something, you had to fill out the RFP and everything. That's normal. But you had to show proof of insurance
before you could turn in the bid. And so their point was, well, this policy might not seem like a lot to you, but it's going to cost me $12,000, $13,000. And it's $12,000, $13,000. And what if I don't get the bid? It's not a policy that I otherwise need. And so I said, well, and we're talking to the manager. The manager's like, no, that's what we need. I was like, well, why wouldn't we just give them time period if they're recommended? They have to secure it within this time period. Yeah, the manager didn't want to do that. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do it anyway. That's what we're going to do. And just changing it. I just changed it. And you saw the influx of businesses, local businesses bidding on things they could within the city. I did stuff like that. I did stuff like give a local preference to businesses. I did stuff like, hey, tell our local businesses, if you all contribute to a local school and you bring in that documentation, we'll count that towards points, because I wanted them to become active in donating and supporting schools. Did those things. It was very helpful.
There are many cities that struggle with this, right? Changing the type of businesses that are in their city and also just increasing their businesses. What is your advice to them? What are I'd like some practical steps that they would take in order to be more attractive to different types of businesses?
Knowing where you are. So like, in Miami Gardens, I had the ability to know where we were located and situated, close to the stadium, close to, 826, close to 95, close to the turnpike, location. Knowing where you are, being able to accentuate that, find that way to sell yourself. So when I'm selling Topgolf, I'm telling them exactly, they're in Miami Gardens, but I'm telling you, hey, listen, it's 10 minutes to get here from Fort Lauderdale. It's 10 minutes to get here. I'm telling you, I'm speaking your language. Like, businesses speak a specific language. Learn their language. Like in relationships, they call it your love language. Businesses have a love language also. Cost, location, processes. They have love languages also. So learn their language. Learn to talk to them in their language. So that's the first thing I would suggest. If you learn to talk to them in their language, and then I would know who you are and what you're trying to do. Not everything is for everybody. Not everything is for everybody. Have that. I had a good sense of it from our community because I had been here my entire life, but have that conversation with your community. What is it that you want to do? Not every community needs a 200-room, four-star hotel. Not every community wants that type of interaction. Find out what it is you're trying to do and be very, very, very specific about those things. And then target who you want. Like there's some stores that I went after Topgolf. They didn't have a lot of locations. I knew they were trying to expand in the market. I was like, it was going to be us or Fort Lauderdale. I was like, man, I could beat Fort Lauderdale. I can beat. Then I heard it's going to be us or down south, like by Doral. I was like, I could be. I just want to be the first. I want to be the first. I could beat them too. So I knew exactly what they were doing, and I was like, hey, I want to beat these guys. I want to beat them, and I want to be the first. I think us being the first will say something, and it did because it gave us proof of concept. For a national brand, it gave us proof of concept that you could come to this black city that people said people wouldn't invest in. And you could invest millions of dollars and it could be successful. That proof of concept still pays off.
In terms of kind of your leadership around building business developing business, what would you say are some of the important kind of leadership thoughts?
I think from a leadership principle perspective, I think visionary leadership when it comes to business development, I literally saw Miami Gardens differently than everyone else did. And it was my ability to communicate that vision, to really look out over things and imagine things that weren't there and tell them that we could do it. Give them the confidence that we could do it, and then work to manifest that imagination into a vision, into a reality. That type of work actually happened right here in Miami Gardens. So when people talk about the transformation of Miami Gardens from a business perspective, and businesses are opening and people are building, but a lot of that stuff was completely vacant or used in a completely different way. I had to actually see it differently. People say I think out of the box. I don't think out of the box. I don't even acknowledge the existence of the box. The box is a social construct. The box are walls that we built that then we complain confine us. That box wasn't built by me. It was just built by somebody who's older than me. Why are they presupposed to be right? Why are they right? I don't believe that they were necessarily right. And if they were right for them, that doesn't mean they're right for us. It's just like they had the ability to choose back then, and we have the ability to choose right now. I get to see it differently. You elected me. I get to see it differently. I'm going to say it. I'm going to do it because you elected me. I've never lied to you. This is how I see the world. I can look out over an open field and imagine a 4-star hotel and restaurants and apartments and entertainment and a performing arts center. I can look at it, imagine it, and speak it into existence. And that's what we're still doing right now in Miami Gardens.
Any final thoughts?
Look, it's when you're trying to reimagine, redefine a city, especially when it comes to business, all the stuff I said, it really matters. But that vision really matters. Listen, if it was looking out at something that was and just thinking about how you can improve it, I don't really need leadership for that. That's evolution. That'll happen naturally in most respects. Don't be afraid to see something that's not there and talk about it. Don't be afraid to actually get people to believe in it. And don't be afraid to aggregate little wins into big success. It can be done. We did it.
Thank you for listening to Reimagining Miami Gardens. Join us for our next episode as we dive into the leadership principles that guided the transformation of Miami Gardens into the vibrant city it is today. Until then,